I think ChatGPT comes out and says, you have all the rights we do to the IP that's out there, except it's not clear they have any rights. So that transfer of rights may not be meaningful. You use ChatGPT comes out and says, welcome to another episode of Deep Dive with the Kulkarni Law Firm. And we have with us Edye Edens and Darshan Kulkarni. I am principal attorney at the Kulkarni Law Firm. Edye is senior attorney at the Kulkarni Law Firm. And what we do is life sciences law, and that includes everything from clinical research to promotional compliance to overall compliance and more. All we do is life sciences work. Today's conversation is about informed consent. Should you use AI to draft your informed consent documents? Edye, as an attorney, why do you care or do you not care about the use of AI in informed consent?
So this is a great topic, and as we were discussing before we came on, there's several threads here. The point of our series is to have, different roles, shared goals, right? And so depending which stakeholder you are and why you want to use it, there's a lot of different parts of the conversation. What we're going to focus on first here, though, is let's talk about the individuals such as the sponsor, the regulatory team, et cetera, that have to actually draft consents and get them approved before we're ever talking about utilizing them with the patients. That's the first stage of consent, at least in a lawyer's mind, right? Because we want to make sure what's going into that consent is not only compliant, but accurate and forthcoming and informative and has all of these different standards that federal regulations have laid out, not just the FDA, in fact, more importantly, OHRP, the Office for Human Research Protections, which is actually the regulatory body that's over each and every IRB, commercial or academic, in the United States. And they have distinct criteria of what has to be in your informed consent. I'm all for anything that we can do to eliminate redundancy, especially in reg. But when I think about drafting the consent, I think, first of all, okay, I'm going to have to plug in the elements that are required to the AI model, which I'm not saying that the model can't handle it. This isn't incredibly complex, but you're going to have to plug that in. You're going to have to plug in the protocol to give it the right information. And then the final piece that I think a lot of folks might not realize is most IRBs, if you're an institutional IRB or an academic, they have a very specific template they expect you to use. And you are essentially plugging and chugging into it. Similarly, if you're an industrial sponsor, or let's say you're working in veteran affairs research, which is heavily regulated, even above and beyond OHRP, you again have very specific templates that must be used, either because the sponsor demands it, the IRB demands it, the veteran affairs regulations demand it, variety of reasons. So I'm not sure what time we're saving. What do you think about that, Darshan?
Enjoying our content? We'd love to hear more. Please like, comment, share, and find more.
I'm going the other way. And
Okay.
I'm going, you know what? I like uploading. Here are the rules we're following. Here's the protocol. Here are the controls we have in place. And AI, I want you to just give me a first draft. If you're going to see this as a final draft, it's probably, I think it's a stupid idea to use AI. However, if you see it as a first draft, I think the first time, like you're pointing out, it'll take you a half hour to put it all together. But the 50th document will be a lot faster. So depending on how many studies you do, if this is your first clinical trial, you don't plan to do the next one for the next 6 months, maybe it's not worth it. However, if you are a GSK, a Pfizer, or whatever, this might be your first draft. The other angle I can see is you're a very, very small organization, and you could pay someone, I don't know, $2,000, $5,000 to draft this informed consent, and you need someone to supervise it, someone else needs to review it, blah, 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 blah. Well, the AI acts as one of those checks and balances, one of those barriers to just look at it as an initial run through. Now, I 100% agree with you. You and I have had conversations with health tech companies that are saying, we'll just replace people. You're not going to replace people. Let's be very clear. What you are going to do is you might speed up people in high volume trials. When you say AI, do you mean a ChatGPT or do you mean a specialized tool that does this? Because I'm not sure, and I'm not convinced yet, that these specialized tools that are coming out are doing something so unique that I need to spend $50,000 for your tool that a ChatGPT won't do for me anyways. It feels like a wrapper. Most of these tools that are out there feel like wrappers, but essentially what ChatGPT can do for me anyways. What's your take?
I think I'm thinking probably, okay, outside of that situation, if you're the academic medical center, if you're an independent site, if you already have a working informed consent template, if you're again in VA research, which I know not everybody does, but it's very different in this regard, then it might not make as much sense, right? So I think the use cases may be very narrow. They may be very powerful, like you and I always talk about high impact, low volume. So it could be one of those situations where it could be a very high impact, even though it's a low volume for certain roles and certain stakeholders. As far as the AI piece, I gotta say I agree. I mean, I was very fortunate to have AI clients, over 2 years ago, already working in the space who very much impressed me and had, frankly, some of the smartest folks I've met legitimately began to show me exactly what you're talking about. What was a wrapper versus what was real? What was actually just using a model that already existed to be efficient versus what was a transformative or generative AI model that actually created something new that could be customized to a value prop. And so I think it's absolutely correct. I mean, I have to say, I remember taking a couple of different companies or products back to some of these experts over the years and going, it doesn't feel like this does anything extra for me. It's not bad technology. It does what they say it will do, but I don't feel like this is so novel. It's worth this price point, or I should be giving it to my clients. And often they would agree and say, yeah, and I can point out why. If they would have done this or this, it would be different. And again, it's not a slam at the companies. The product still does something. It does what you deliver. It's just like you said, is this really, and to me, I think that's where people need to understand, there's the daily use of AI as a function or a tool. Then there's the transformative generative AI, which is where the real heart and value prop of AI is. The fact that it could generate something based on a customization, based on a model, based on you training and iterating with it, that then truly does create whatever this content is, informed consent, a regulatory submission, whatever you need it to be. But it's not plug and play. It's not control F. It's truly generating content, utilizing all the sources you've providing it and the lens and schema that you've trained it on. That's when it's magical.
So the one thing I'm struggling with is a comment you made, which is a lot of sponsors are saying that we made those investments into AI, but we're not necessarily seeing the return on value that we thought we would. I think that's the big struggle you're seeing, which is those investments are being made, but is AI as it exists right now, wrapper or no wrapper, ChatGPT 4 or not? Well, I think we're at 4.5 or whatever it is. But now I think that the future might bear out very differently, whether you talk about DeepSeek from China, which is dropping the actual cost that's needed, or the use of a better model that comes out, or a Grok or a Gemini that might have a completely different way of thinking through it, or Claude that has a different way of thinking through it. I think the fact is that right now, that investment needs a better ROI, and saying we can use your AI, put it in, and we'll get a response is problematic. The other element I think through is, let's say you put it in, you get an output. Who owns that output? Because technically speaking, depending on which model you use, the tools it was trained on were often tools that were copyrighted, which means that you couldn't have trained on those tools. You already have a copyright violation. Then the output, depending on which tool you use, I think ChatGPT comes out and says, you have all the rights we do to the IP that's out there, except it's not clear they have any rights. So that transfer of rights may not be meaningful. And Claude said, you only get rights to your prompt. It speaks nothing about the ownership afterwards. Now, you might have other agreements that sort of add on to that, but you still suffer from the IP ownership issue we spoke about in the first place.
Find related podcasts below.
I wonder if you can create a informed consent document and then use the AI to challenge it and see if it satisfies the criteria. So instead of it being the drafting model, it's the checking model.
I actually completely agree about, wondering the ownership and the copyright. I don't worry about it as much in this narrow scenario. I don't think anyone's worried about who owns the informed consent. In fact, I'd be more worried about the fact that you're plugging your protocol in. Right? Like that's more of where I'm concerned. The informed consent that kicks out doesn't have as much information, but you're going to have plugged a lot of non-public information in it to get a good consent. And again, we're already questioning the value prop of how much time is really saved here. So that's where I would go with that. And like I said, I wouldn't be quite as concerned about that. I think for me, when you look at those major companies that have invested in AI, a lot of the way that they went about investing in it, a lot of the way they went about creating their models, unfortunately, at least in my humble opinion, we did it the way we've always done it. So instead of going to the experts in the industry early on, we just repurposed people internally and hoped they could learn it. Instead of starting fresh or partnering with the right company to build something custom to meet the need that we were all about using AI for, we just used some system we already had in-house and thought we could flip it around. So I think there's a certain amount of ROI that's not coming because you didn't put the money in. Crap in, crap out. Sorry about ya. Don't care if it is AI involved. I also think a lot, to be fair, of those companies didn't know what they were going to use it for. So it's like, help me create the most powerful model. Okay, but to do what? And models are very, very specific. That's why AI is so powerful, because you can train a model to be that knowledgeable and that specific to your need and that specific to your area, and to iterate over time in a way in which you need it. So if done well, it can be very powerful. If done cheap, or again, kind of the way we've always done it, then again, crap in, crap out. And I think that's what you're seeing. The ones who do have a decent model or are proud of what they've got, I see a lot of them going, okay, I don't know what the next step is, or I don't know how to cross apply this to other needs. So it's really a struggle and a bit of a stopping point. As far as the idea of running it through and seeing if
Edye,
the AI, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that second question that I raised, I shouldn't have raised it, because I feel like people should come back and listen to the different podcasts we're going to record on exactly that topic. Should AI be used to cross-examine your documents as opposed to being used to actually create your documents? And that's going to be another podcast. But before we go, Edye, how can people reach you or reach us?
As always, I was gonna say, you can always reach us, our website, kulkarnilawfirm.com, LinkedIn, and of course, we both have emails, Edye at kulkarnilawfirm.com and Darshan at kulkarnilawfirm.com. Please reach out anytime.
Thank you again.
Call, click, or email.